one thing I'll just note that you said too that feels like a really something I've learned in community through the non-monogamous poly community is like close relationships with other genders is okay and totally beautiful and doesn't have to lead to anything. And we can be really, really intimate and close without that. I think that's like kind of like a feature of the openness of a relationship in some ways in our really hetero society.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 396. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a lovely conversation with Johnny. Johnny started exploring non-monogamy about 10 years ago when he and his partner first got together.
Yeah, they've been very intentional about how they've navigated non-monogamy over the last 10 years. One thing we love about this conversation and about how Johnny and his partner define their relationship is that they define it as open and that everything is a conversation. And so today, Johnny takes us through how they've gotten here, what that's looked like over the years, and just how they navigate their relationship together. And it's a really, really beautiful conversation. So thank you, Johnny, for reaching out, for coming on the show, and for sharing your story.
Johnny is also a somatic and mindfulness practitioner and coach. He talks more about this work in the episode, but we wanted to remind you all to go over to the podcast show notes and click on his website. Go check out his work.
Yes, and a reminder that one of the pieces of work he's going to talk about are his free support calls. So those are a great resource if you're looking for, a way into this work or trying to figure it out for yourself. So definitely go check out the great resources that Johnny provides on his website.
For anyone who's a premium subscriber, we'll jump right into the interview with Johnny now. And for anyone else, we're going to go through a few announcements. First up, our premium subscription. If you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, we still tell you about upcoming dates of important events in the outro to sign up for the premium subscription. Go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up there for only $4 a month. Next up, we wanted to tell you all about our community. We launched our community about 6 years ago, and today we have over 300 people socializing and supporting one another every single day. We host our community on a platform called Mighty Networks. We have monthly community calls, in-person retreats, and earlier this year, we started offering free monthly workshops as well.
Our next monthly workshop is coming up on June 25th. It's hosted by Orit Krug. It is called Releasing the Fear of Abandonment, a Somatic Approach. And we wanted to just take a moment to talk about the different workshops that we have every month and how these look. So earlier this year, as Emma said, we started offering these workshops as part of our community membership. So far this year, we've had workshops on shame, sexual health and STI stigma, jealousy, and strategies for being intentional about how we build our non-monogamous structure so that it supports our lives and we can keep being the amazing people we are. We actually bring in different workshop facilitators to do all of these workshops. These are not hosted by Emma and me. We're there. We're part of it. But these are really a way for us to bring in different voices, elevate those voices, and bring in a wide array of opinions on how to do relationships. And later this year, we've also got workshops coming up on relationship repair, strengthening your connection through play, and choosing a pleasure-based life, allowing yourself to bring more pleasure into your world. So again, please check out all of these workshops. We have descriptions, full descriptions, plus information about all of our workshop facilitators over on our website. There's a link in the show notes, or you can find it under the workshops tab of our website. And again, we'd love to have you come check these out. And if you miss one, don't worry, they're recorded. We offer the recordings for everybody who's in our community. You can find those going back to the beginning. So please check it out. We'd love to have you join our community. You get tons of amazing things, and it's only $8 a month. To find out more and to join, head over to our website and click on the community tab, and you'll learn about all of it there. We'd love to have you join us.
Next up, we wanted to tell you about our favorite way to get tested for STIs. We were joking the other day about having a favorite way to get tested for STIs.
Who doesn't have a favorite way?
But our favorite way is stdcheck.com. It is a service that Finn and I use. We've used it for years. It is fast and discreet and really simple to use. So go over to the resources tab of our website. Using the links there saves you $10, making a 10-panel test only $129, and you support the podcast and our show. So thank you so much for doing that in advance. Thank you to anyone who's been using the links as well. We really appreciate it, and go check it out.
Yes, and last thing we want to remind you all is that we would love to hear from you. Please send us an email, reach out. We'd love to hear your feedback, and even more so, we'd love to have you come on the podcast. The power of this podcast is really in the diversity of the different stories that we get to tell, and we'd love to add your story to the list. So please reach out to us, and we'll make it happen.
And with that, let's go and talk with Johnny. Welcome to the podcast today, Johnny. We're excited to have you here. We met you about 2 years ago at Southwest Love Fest, and we're excited to dive in today and learn more about your story. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to see your faces again after a couple of years and to connect.
Yeah, it's we're really looking forward to chatting today. So yeah, we'd love to dig into your story. Maybe just starting with an introduction of who is Johnny, what brings you here today, what gets you up in the morning every day.
Oh man, yeah, those are 3 separate questions.
That's true. That's true. All right, go. You've got 1 hour. 1 hour, go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some of my identities, I'm half Cuban, half Filipino. Both of my parents were born in their respective countries, so I came here. So I'm first generation United States. And yeah, I grew up in South Florida, really diverse place. I really liked it there. Eventually came out to Tucson, it's where I live now. We can give a little bit more of that story if we want. But yeah, and then so I worked for my schooling. I went to school to be a mechanical engineer. And so that's kind of what I did for a while. I did that for about a decade. Yeah. And then eventually I transitioned, and this is kind of like what my life is now as a somatic and mindfulness practitioner and coach and support person, facilitator. So that's my work, and that's kind of my world that I live in. And yeah, we can talk about that transition and what that led to. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Some of my things that I love to do, I used to be an avid rock climber and getting high up and kind of finding that edge in life. And since then, I haven't actually climbed. I hung up my climbing gear about a year ago. And so that feels great. I've kind of transitioned now I play a lot of music now, consider myself a musician, and I meditate a lot, kind of dive into my own body and my experience. And that's kind of fuels my work, for sure. Spend a lot of time out in nature, doing retreats and camping and different things like that. Yeah.
I love it.
It feels like a good place to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that we've got 3 recovering engineers on the call today.
Yes.
We got a mechanical, an electrical, and an environmental. All all recovering.
Company.
Yeah.
Support group. Yeah, support group for recovering engineers.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. Well, yeah, maybe let's dig into the relationship-y side of life.
Yeah.
What do relationships look like for you today as it stands in early May 2025? And then we'll go back in time and figure out how in the world we got here.
Yeah, thank you. Relationships, I have a partner that we're kind of, we're each other's close partners. Primaries, if we use that language. And we've been together pretty excitingly. This June will be 10 years.
Wow.
Since we
Congratulations. Yeah.
So it'll be a decade. And yeah, she's amazing. Her name's Natalie. Yeah. So she's my partner. And then I guess since the inception of our relationship, we have considered, what the relationship's going to look like. She was friends with a really good, one of her closest friends in San Francisco was Polly. And that's kind of what introduced us to this world about 10 years ago. And right now we consider our relationship to be an open relationship. And how we define that for ourselves is that everything's open for discussion, So whatever comes up, another human, an experience or whatever, anything's open for us to talk about and to discuss and to find where we want to land on it and to find where we both land on it. And yeah, so that's how we define our open relationship.
I love that.
Yeah.
I definitely want to like dig into that. Like, I want to go back in time and talk through how we got here, but I want to talk about too, when we get there, like what that looks like in practice for you, because I think there's a lot of people when they first open, and we were the same, like it was very boxed in. And then as you go, I think it often, some of that falls away and you get to a place where like, well, we can just sort of, we can take it as it comes, but it doesn't start that way. And so I'd love to hear what that looks like today when we kind of figure out how we got here.
Yeah. It is kind of how it looks like. Is kind of what you said, take it as it comes for sure. Because it's like, it's like each experience that comes up, or we're like, in the past, we've been maybe at a festival or something. And then, there's like a conversation that someone meets someone or something like that. It's just like this openness to be honest about what's coming up and to share.
Yeah.
And to, there's maybe still be fear there or something for sure. But it's like the openness to be like, yeah, we can have this conversation. And I think what's coming up to share is that we feel really solid in our foundation, that we've built over time. And so that feels like we can have these conversations when something comes up that's, in line with the open relationship and having these open conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about that more, but I'd also love to take us back in time. What did relationships life look like for you at the beginning of like relationshiping?
The beginning of relationshiping. Yeah. If we go way back when, I think my first ever like quote unquote girlfriend was like, I was in 6th grade, and everyone like we kind of knew like we liked each other, and all of our friends were like, okay, get them on to these tables at lunch together, and everyone left the table, and then like we like asked each other out, and then I was so immature that we never talked after that. It was so odd, and then it just like eventually faded.
I know that story well. That was how I did it. Yeah. We're boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, I'll never talk to you again.
Right. We talked on the phone like twice, and it was just like really silent phone conversations.
So relatable.
Yeah. But, over time, I think the notable relationship was when I was like 16, I met a partner there, and we were together for like 5 years. And so that was pretty like 16 to 21 was
pretty formative years there.
Formative years of my life, and formative years to be in a long-term kind of relationship that like, also in that time, I think a lot of relationships aren't very healthy. And so ours, we didn't talk about things, and resentment build up and all that. So yeah, it was kind of rough, I would say. And then leaving that relationship, maybe I was 21 or so, I was pretty down and depressed. I like kind of lost my identity, lost the ability to have fun. And like, I used to be growing up really like a jokester kind of kid, and like happy and alive and vibrant. And I lost some of that in that time. And so coming out of that, I was down. And that's actually when I started getting into like more dangerous kind of hobbies to give myself some life.
Like rock climbing.
Like rock climbing and like riding bicycles and stuff. And so, I took like a couple years off there and explored and went around the country actually on a 2-month camping and climbing trip. And actually on that trip, that's where I met Natalie. We met in Las Vegas at a Las Vegas pool party, which is like kind of counter to our identities in a lot of ways. And like had a weekend, like crazy weekend together. And then we just stayed in touch, and we've been together ever since. So that's,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And was that where you were first introduced to non-monogamy? Did Natalie bring that to you when you met each other?
Good question. Yeah. So we met at a Vegas pool party, and then we spent the whole weekend together partying and getting to know each other and like sharing. Oh, I've never shared this with anyone, experiences. Yep. And then I was just graduating from university. And so I ended up moving to Boston to live with my brother there and sleep on his couch and like figure out what I was going to do. And she was living in San Francisco, so the other side of the country. And so we were like as far away as you could be. And we were just still talking and texting and like Skyping back then every day.
By the way,
yeah.
RIP Skype.
I know.
That's just a recent.
Yeah.
We just lost Skype, so yeah, RIP
RIP
Skype.
the Skype
Our,
days.
our
Yeah.
first interviews were done over Skype.
They were.
Yep.
Were they?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Good old Skype. Yeah. And so in that time we were far apart. And so I think that was kind of the first shaping of it. Like, okay, we're apart, but we weren't like constraining and defining our relationship because we're just like, oh, well, let's just see how this goes in a fluid way. And I think that kind of started the foundation of that. And then, like I said, her close colleague, who's a psychologist, and does actually now like poly research, and he's still really in the field. He kind of started introducing us to that, and we were that was her best friend, and so we would hang out a lot together. And yeah, we got kind of thrown into that world and got introduced to it there. And then it kind of solidified because I moved to Tucson eventually, and then she moved to Tucson eventually. And we wanted to meet a poly community here. And so like those were the first events we started going to in Tucson.
Okay.
And you met a lot of those people at Southwest Love Fest now. And so they became like our community and our friends that we had here, like our first community in Tucson. And then, this idea of, or this philosophy or framework or mental structure, I guess, of like open-mindedness and sharing vulnerably and communication and like cuddling together, and like all of that kind of felt really in line with us. And so that's how we like kind of dropped into the community originally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you were living on opposite ends of the country, it sounds like it was part of the conversation, but were you practicing it? Like, were you maybe going on dates, and was she going on dates, and you were actively in an open partnership at that point too?
Yeah, I would say yes, in some ways. Like I know, yeah, we were in some ways, but we weren't really like defining it as like we're partners. We were just like, yeah, we're just talking all the time and really close, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah. I think we kind of like maybe 6 or 8 months into that, maybe we kind of started to be like, okay, now we're going to be partners, I guess. And then once we moved together, it was for sure. Yeah. Once we both moved to Tucson. Yeah.
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 Sounds like
Nice.
that distance really in conversations allowed you to form a friendship and a partnership
Trust.
but like, yeah, in almost a slow way, because you're physically so far apart that there's some limitations there, and allowed you to have some conversations that maybe might not have happened at the beginning if you hadn't been so far apart.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head for sure. Yeah, we've talked about that too, around like how it's such a gift to start long distance because we developed all these other ways of connecting that weren't physical, And so we developed all that, and this trust of like, it was really a trust of, and it feels nice to feel in my body and reflect on, but it was really this trust in like the connection that we had, and we didn't need to like worry about other things like, oh, she went to Burning Man after we met, and like, oh, I didn't really worry about if she was going to like, hook up with someone or meet someone there, because I felt like this trust already, and like, yeah, we have a special, and the other things doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Almost in like the absence of a label, right? And I think that's, it's interesting talking about this, because we talked to a lot of people where, and it's been recent too, where just talking about like in the early stages of dating, everybody's sort of in these little non-monogamous relationships where you're not really defining it. We're dating, but I'm not expecting you to not be dating. And so everybody's kind of doing it until we get to this, like, there's like these inflection points, like, okay, well, now we're partners. Everybody else should go away. And it sounds like when you got to the point of, oh, we're partners, you didn't kick everybody else away.
Yeah. It was like I would say we still moved pretty slowly into the openness, and it was from the start, it was an option. Yeah. It was like, there is an option, and we moved like slowly into it, but it was like, which just felt, I'm sure you guys talk about this all the time, but it felt like not boxed in, like a long-term openness and like security around like, oh, expansiveness, because it's like, oh, if I'm choosing this person, I don't have to be like, oh, is this the one person for the rest of all eternity? It felt like,
Yeah.
okay, if someone else comes around, there's always that ability and openness to have the conversation.
For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I think it also, I mean, I'm curious for you, did that also help build the trust knowing, right, this person is choosing to be with me. They could go out with anybody. They could be with other people, but they're choosing to be with me. I'm choosing to be with them. So
Mm.
you're developing sort of that trust that we both want to be here versus we should be here or I have to be here.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're choosing each other every day. Every morning, we're going to choose each other. And that feels important. Yeah, yeah. We're not
Yeah.
just like choosing each other because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, you moved to Tucson, and I feel like that's maybe want to touch on that first before going into once you get there. It seems like there's a lot in that for you, and
Mhm.
I'm curious and want to give you opportunity to talk about that
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
decision and move.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So I went to Boston, was figuring things out, but I had met Natalie on like the 2-month trip to eventually get to Boston. And so after we met and we were just really connecting, I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to engineering jobs on the West Coast. And she was in the Bay Area at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to try to get to the Bay Area. And applying for some months. And then the first closest job that I landed was Tucson, Arizona. It's a different state, but much closer than Boston.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And so the job I got here, it was like a year-long kind of contract. So the idea was that I'm just going to work here for a year and like we can take a short flight to see each other, every couple months or something. And then after that year, I'll find a new job in the Bay Area and we'll kind of finally be in the same city. And then it just happened that we both fell in love with Tucson. It was totally on accident. And then she was visiting me and I was visiting her. And then after I lived here in Tucson for 6 months, she finished her postdoc, which was at Berkeley in
Mhm.
psychology. She's a psychologist. And she was really burnt out at that point, which most people are after that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she wanted to get out of the city and move somewhere slower. And so we're like, why don't you just come here? And we'll see what happens. And then, yeah, that was like 9 years ago or something. So it was totally unexpected. But like the desert is amazing, like right now I'm looking at mountains through my window and trees. And so Tucson's surrounded by mountains. And you can get from being in the city to being out on a trail without seeing any houses or, electric poles in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for those reasons. And the communities here are really strong. And there's a lot of spiritual communities and like healing kind of communities, which is the work that we both are in, like communal healing. And so, it's aligned in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that it's become such an unexpected home for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
for both of
Uh-huh.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, Johnny, how things shifted when you move in together, right? You sort of had this openness, and then you move in together. You're probably getting closer. You're now cohabitating. How does your relationship start to evolve, and how does the non-monogamy piece start to sort of go along with that?
Good question. Yeah, and this was the first time that like when she moved in with me, it was the first time I lived with a partner,
Yeah,
like in the same space. And not for her, but like in terms of this amount of seriousness, I guess, or this amount of how connected we were. And so I think that was just a lot of learning for both of us, just up front in terms of that
totally. It's a huge shift.
cohabitating.
Yeah.
Yeah, learning all that, like, and I think I was doing this, and what's coming up for me to share is like the totally intermingling of energies, like merging.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
That
totally common.
shift, especially from long distance to living together.
Yeah, so we like merge, and we're like, we're doing every single thing together. This is amazing, and then being like, okay, we need to like decouple and like find that right balance of like how
Yep.
much. And so we had to and it's also because we get along so well, and we like have a lot of the same interests, and our relationships are really smooth for the most part, and just like we enjoy spending so much time together that that can actually be its own little trap that we spend too much time together. We do everything together. And so we've had to learn over the years to spend time apart. Yeah. And this is kind of fast forwarding, but I'll just kind of say, and like what we've learned about that too is like, we have a really beautiful office space here in Tucson that's separate from our home. So it's even like now, like I'll spend like a couple, 2 or 3 nights a week sleeping here, just to like help with that, and like keep it fresh. And so just learning that over time, how important that is too.
Yeah, to have alone time and time with others.
Yeah.
I love that too, because I think that's something, we can really relate to.
Oh, very much so.
I would say we moved in together pretty early in our partnership and got very enmeshed, very intertwined. And now, 20 years later, we're starting to figure out how to separate, but like those threads they are very locked together at this point. And so I love that I think it's natural, right? You come together for the first time, you were long distance. Like, of course, the pendulum's going to swing. Like, we're going to soak this up. And then it's, get to a point where like, okay, now let's figure out where the healthy balance is for us.
Yeah, totally. And so to answer your other question a little bit more, it happened really sweetly and naturally in some ways because the first community that we really got deeply engaged in was the poly community here in Tucson. And back then, the poly community now, unfortunately, it was like, I think this probably happened to a lot of communities around, but COVID, was really hard on our community here. So it hasn't really recovered since then. But back then, it was super thriving. There was like poly potlucks and discussions and happy hours and events and parties and stuff all the time. And so that's what we were attending. So the energy was just around us and the discussions were around us. And so it kind of flowed smoothly, I would say, from the distance to cohabitating in terms of the openness of our relationships and the conversations. And and maybe we also started to feel more secure in our relationship, which allowed for, expansion out of it and openness. Yeah, that's how I would answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you're, developing that security with the two of you, and you say it sort of opens up a little more expansiveness, what did that start to look like on maybe just like a practical sense? Were you like actively like on dating apps, or was it still sort of, if somebody comes along, we'll entertain it? Or how did that sort of work for you two?
Yeah, I would say in terms of, for both of us, similar. And it was the second one of like, if someone comes along, we'll just entertain it, which did happen for sure. Like someone in the community, oh, okay, there's a connection there. Natalie would go on dates with them and, things like that. So yeah, it definitely happened in those ways. And I would say other ways was like a festival experience. We're both like attracted to someone. Okay, let's like engage the three of us, and have some fun. Things like that for sure. Yeah. And so it was like, and just like it still is, I think, of like, if it feels natural and it comes around, let's have the conversation and like, let's see how to make it work and make it work for all of us.
Yeah. Did you two hit any bumps along the way?
Yeah. We definitely hit bumps. I think everyone hit bumps. Yeah, and it's good to hit bumps, right?
It's gonna happen.
For sure hit bumps. I don't know. Like, I think the bump that we hit that's coming up in my mind right now is like around not super clarity around, what each other's maybe perceived, what I thought my boundaries were versus what she thought or something like that. Like, I don't know. One example that's coming to mind is just like, oh, we're out. And then like, okay, yes, someone feels attracted to someone else. And it's like, yeah, let's pursue that tonight. Yeah, go ahead, go for it. And then like the next day recapping about what happened and stuff and be like, oh, I did not expect that to happen. Yeah. And then the other partner is like, oh, how did you not expect that to happen?
Yep. Yeah.
So, and then just like jealousy flares up and then like, okay, things flare up and like feeling hurt. And then, but it's just like, now let's like repair and talk about it. I think that's kind of what I work with people in this community now, with my work one-on-one. And that is what I feel like I find really is a really strong, important piece is like learning how to repair, right? Like that's what's so important because there's going to be bumps and there's going to be things, especially when you're going outside of like the flow and the grain of our society. There's so much to learn. And so it's like, can we be okay with the bumps and can we like learn how to repair together? Yeah.
I love that you say that because I think, like you said, as we shed all of the, not even all, but some of the bounds and some of the expectations that are put on us or that we take on, and you start to be like, okay, we're just going to have this expansive model where we talk about things as they come up. Like some of the things that are going to come up are going to be hard things, and how do we then move through those, repair when we mess up? Because they're not even really mess ups; they're just, of course, I'm sure there are some, but a lot of it is just, you thought this, I thought this, we thought very different things, and now one or both of us are hurting and we need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's like our like we haven't been taught how to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And so how to do it well, how to even start the conversation, how to like a lot of my work is like, can we sit with the uncomfortable emotions without like totally, without reacting too strongly and like, just be able to like close our eyes and be with, oh, what does jealousy feel like in my body? What does jealousy feel like? Can I just like sit with that for a bit and learn from it? And like, what does jealousy need in my body? Okay, I need to like go on a walk by myself before I have this conversation. It's whatever it is. But yeah, so like learning to tend to ourselves, learning to like listen to our needs, and then learning to share what that is. Like, okay, yeah, I felt like this when this came up. This is what I'm needing from you. Can you honor this request that I could make?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious too, as you and Natalie have been navigating this. You mentioned earlier, like when we first talked or when we first started the conversation, that you are sort of in a primary style partnership, and you said, well, if you use those words, and I'm curious, do you use that language, and like what does maybe hierarchy look like for you two, and how do you navigate that?
It's a good question. So I'll just say that, especially post-COVID, since like in Tucson, the poly community has kind of like been struggling for sure. And so like that's us too. And then there was also some like things that happened in COVID where like people got really upset and like there was like some kind of restorative justice processes that we tried to that tried to happen with differing amounts of success.
Yeah.
It's challenging. They were challenging times and challenging things came up. So I would say that it's almost like in some ways it's interesting because we're still friends with a lot of these people, the same people, but we're not like our primary identities as a community aren't poly. Does that make sense? Yeah.
For the two of you, yeah.
For the two of us and for like our close little friend group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though we all were in this greater poly community at one time. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't feel like right now I have to use that language as often.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, because if someone comes around and is interested and then when we like have this conversation, it's kind of like a conversation between them and me and Natalie, and we're all like, just like, yeah. And so I guess I would say that we are primary partners because, we live together and we are each other's like main person and, we're each other's foundation. Like we would put each other first, I think. But it's also to say that like the way we categorize in our philosophy of our relationship is that we are in an open relationship. Everything's open for discussion. So if someone did come around and it was like, wow, this is going to be a human that feels like it's going to shift the paradigm a bit, that is also open for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's a bit of a co-creation between you, Natalie, and whoever the other person or people are, right? To say, this is our situation or this is my situation.
Yeah. What's yours?
What's yours? What works for you? What works for all of us? How do we make this feel good?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious too, over time, how you have, I know you're in the poly community kind of where you're at, but how have you navigated being like open and talking about relationship structures with others in your life?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I would say with others in my life, I describe it in the same way that I described it to you. If they ask or if it comes up in conversation, which it has come up with, like, I visited friends back home in Florida, sometimes over the holidays I'll see them and somehow it comes up. I think because a lot of them aren't, yeah, who knows? It just comes up. Maybe they're like curious about it or whatever. They like know I'm into a lot of alternative things. So they just assume maybe, or like, they're like, oh, the poly thing or open relationship. So they ask, and then I say, yeah, Natalie and I are in an open relationship. And what it means is that anything's open for discussion. So it could be like another partner, it could be an experience, it could be something, but it's open for us to talk about, and we both feel like we can bring it up. Yeah, that usually leads into lots of conversations and a lot of poly and non-monogamy education that you give to other humans, but which is fine. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Have you shared or come out and talked to family about it as well?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I feel like I might have shared with my mom. I'm also queer, like, and so bisexual, queer, like, yeah, attracted to all humans, really. And so I have come out with that to my mom way back in the day, and it landed pretty well, surprisingly, in some ways. I mean, my mom's a pretty cool person, but she was just like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So I feel like if yeah, it came around, like, I don't know, I have this like future, maybe fantasy. I don't know if fantasy is the right word, but kind of fantasy. But this future thought that comes into my mind sometimes, or story, and I think Natalie has it too sometimes, of like, oh, let's go home with Thanksgiving, and like there'd be another partner or something like that. And I feel like it would be totally fine in my family, luckily. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
too. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At least my direct family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
My siblings and parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. I love that you have that and support and openness with them all.
Mhm.
And I'm curious too, how do you see anything shifting or changing for the two of you as you move forward?
I could definitely see like more exploration into the openness realm, because it hasn't happened too much since COVID. It's also been like, I mean, COVID happened and then it was like a really hard time. I mean, kind of like we were talking about before we started recording. We
Yeah.
also have had our dark nights of the souls really in relationship over the last few years. Yeah, like lots of losses in family and people passing away, and it's still kind of challenging. So, it felt like, yeah, this needs tending, and and we're also both have our private practices and our businesses and stuff. So there's lots of things that have been needing tending, like a lot of family tending, spending a lot of time visiting family. And so that has been our priority. And as that shifts in some coming years, I feel like, yeah, there could be space opened up. And so I feel like space could open up there. And we both definitely have curiosities around that for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. I love the example of just that you're sharing with your relationship here of like figuring out what works when it's like through life challenges. and
Mhm.
and sometimes the priority has to be focused somewhere else, and then shifting and changing that over time,
Mhm.
and communicating that, I'm assuming, with the people too, like
Mhm.
and with people in your life, because we are only have so much time and capacity in life, and sometimes the priorities do need to shift.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we only have so much capacity energetically, emotionally, spiritually, time wise. And so it's kind of like part of the human condition. And I think it's also sadly part of like our, USA, maybe not just, but like more Western modern culture, because we all like live in these isolated houses. It's something that we've experienced too. Like we were trying to engage in like a really like a co-parenting kind of situation with this other couple that we're super, super close to years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. But it like felt really challenging because of just the nuclear family home isolation. And I think it's a really similar concept with poly and non-monogamy in our society, that it just like takes a little bit of extra energy because we're not all living close together in little communities and sharing resources. And so
Mhm.
I think that makes it take a little bit more energy and time and calendaring and all that. And so when you have these other big things happening, it makes sense that your capacity is limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's I think for me at least, when I think about this, it's not anything to do with the importance of somebody else, what they
Right.
mean to me, nothing to do with that. It's just purely like if I don't take care of this over here, whether it's M and I's partnership or just it could be work, it could be a family, like you said, death in a family or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're always figuring out where to put our energy, where is our
Yeah.
priority right now. And that can be really hard when you're building or growing some type of a connection with somebody, and you have to like shift away from that, or shift the amount that you can give to it.
Totally. Yeah, and as you say that, I'm just like feeling some sadness welling up, you know? Yeah, because it's like, yeah, that is sad in some ways, how like community and partnerships and yeah, like that. Yeah, I guess I'm feeling sadness in the loss because I did kind of experience that, like community kind of, yeah, just feeling isolated because it's like, yeah. And it's just sad too how that's just how our society has been built, in modern times around like, yeah, for some reason, when something's really hard going on, like a death in the family, there can be like this isolating feature that comes with it, which
For sure.
feels
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
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 Well, you've brought up community a lot in
Mhm.
in the conversation today, and it's a thing that we absolutely love to talk about. People listening are rolling their eyes at the moment, which is fine. It's just like it's a big part of what we've learned for ourselves has been so important. And I'm curious, like a little bit about the path you had around community. And I know you sounded like when you landed in Tucson, that was really like your first that's where you met most of your friends. And what that meant for you and how that looked as you were
Mm.
building that.
Mm. Yeah. It's kind of special. It's nice to do this call because it's special to reflect on like these early times. Yeah, it's really sweet. And so what feels important, what's bubbling up for me around this is the specialness, the like, oh, the ooey gooey connectionness of like being vulnerable with other humans. Like,
Hmm.
and so like these non-monogamous communities can be really good for that. Often are, I think. And so that's what's coming up for me is like, oh, I have finally experienced and learned and felt in an intimate way how good it feels, how nourishing it is, and how important it is to like have these people around you in community that you can be yourself. You can like take the mask off. I could be like as queer as I wanted, as like goofy as I wanted, whatever, and be accepted and loved. And I could share sad things, share struggles, share relationship struggles with these people and really be held in that. And so I think that's what's coming up for me in community that I didn't have before.
Hmm.
And once I feel it and like, yeah, I have these humans that I can be raw with and authentic with. Once have felt how nourishing that was, I don't think I could be without it. If I moved, I'd be like, yes, that's my first priority is to find those humans that I can really drop into, yeah, humanness with, I guess. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think to do it too in a way where I think can be easy for us to say, well, I was really deep, I was really vulnerable, I took all these masks off, and that creates like this level of connection that I think can be easily conflated with, now I'm in love, now I love you, now we should be building some type of a partnership, versus like maybe what we really needed was a friendship, the deep
Yeah.
friendship, maybe with cuddling, maybe with some level of intimacy that isn't a partnership necessarily. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm curious for you, like if you like what maybe your experience was around that, like building these deep connections
Mhm.
that maybe didn't have a clear line between friend, partner, support, whatever they were.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It reminds me of like when we started like, being just naked together in non-sexual ways, and like naked hot tubbing or naked hot spring or like finding a river and we all like, and just how that is like kind of like blurring that line a bit
Mhm.
and there's a level of intimacy there. And then also it's just like, yeah, cuddle puddles and parties and stuff, which it's um yeah, it feels like this level of intimacy and human connection that maybe has a little bit of safety around it too, because there is a bit of a non-sexual component, at least not in those, there's boundary in the cuddle puddles, boundaried
Mhm.
experiences. So there's a little bit of like safe intimacy and safe connection. And I think that is really one of the beautiful that what I felt is one of the really beautiful strengths or like pros, I guess, of non-monogamous communities is that like, yeah, we're gonna blur this line a little bit and find this deep, really heartfelt connection with people that aren't our romantic partners. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing I'll tag on to there to say is a lot of my growth in learning how to listen, learning how to share vulnerably, connecting with other humans has been in men's work. And so like men's groups that I've been in for, since I've been in Tucson almost, and then I started my own. I have now that kind of run through my business and some other private ones. And so this feels like adjacent to that because it's really hard for men to share vulnerably and openly with other men, and to like be
Yeah.
real. And so if we get to practice that in a circle of just people that identify as male, doesn't have to be just cis men, but people that identify as male, that pushing ourselves to do that
Mhm.
really does open up this skill and this like ability. And so that was really transformative for me in my own way of like, yeah, I'm going to learn how to share, some emotional stuff with these other men. And then it's easier for me to do with my partner. It's easier to do with like other people we're exploring or my friends and community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that you talk about that and bring
Yeah.
that piece in because I think as you're talking, I feel like there's this trap set, and I think it's primarily, I would say primarily for men, but not exclusively. Where
Mhm.
right, you don't really have these spaces to talk vulnerably with other men because of all the reasons that we're told that men don't do that. Right, we're supposed to
Mhm.
spit and watch football and do the manly shit. But you also can't do that with women because if you're developing a connection like that with a woman, that's going to be threatening to if she's got a partner, or it's going to be maybe perceived as you're trying to make something happen romantically or sexually. And so you're sort of stuck in this no man's land, pun unintended, but it worked out really great, where you can't talk to anybody about your shit because it's not okay anywhere you go.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so we don't know how to then talk about our shit. And so we need to learn and practice. And that's where these like kind of safe containers really help us do that. So it's like one thing I'm really passionate about creating and facilitating for sure is just like, it's like I'm not an expert in this, but I am skilled at like creating this safe, open, loving container. And can we just like share in that and be ourselves and really learn to listen to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I'll just note that you said too, that feels like a really something I've learned in community through the non-monogamous poly community is like close relationships with other genders is okay and totally beautiful and doesn't
Yeah.
have to lead to anything. And we can be really, really intimate and close without that. I think that's
Yeah.
like kind of like a feature of the openness of a relationship in some ways in our really hetero society.
Yeah. Yeah, that you can have those connections and they can have a sexual component or they don't have to have a sexual component or have a romantic component. They don't have to have a romantic component. They can still be close, intimate connections and
Mhm.
relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I also love too what you said about the doing the men's work because I just feel very similarly. Like I've been running a monthly men's group inside of our community for
Mhm.
5-ish years, maybe 6 years now, and then I've also been running a more like a tighter weekly one that's been running for coming up on 3 years
Mm.
here,
Awesome.
and similar to you, like you said. I'm not an expert in this. And I feel, when I showed up on day one, I was not even, I had no idea. And I learned that so much of it was just honestly creating a space where people can talk and say things, and that no one's gonna like make a big deal about it, or that it's going to be held, right? It was really just creating a space where there is space, where there's actual space. And so I love that you said that. And I just hope that people can hear that, right? That it's not, you don't have to have a master's degree in men's group, facilitation.
Or group facilitation.
It's just really about creating a space. And, is there probably stuff that happens in our groups that is reinforcing some, negative or toxic behaviors? I'm sure there are. And then we catch it, or we call each other out, or we learn from it. And we're all just trying to do a little bit better, right? We're not perfect at it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And the healing really comes from that. Can we just like be together?
Yeah.
And like, and the model can be super simple. Like just each person, there's 6 people that show up, just give each person 10 minutes to talk.
Mhm.
And set a timer, and like if you want it, you don't even need to have feedback, and like just I support everyone listening to just like get together with 5 or 6 of your friends and just set a timer for 15 minutes, go around the room, and it'll really change your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Bonus, you can encourage people to share something, but they can also share a movement or a sound or something else like that. Like think outside the box. That doesn't necessarily have to be like pouring their heart out.
Yeah, it can be anything. It can be, I often prompt like, hey, you can share a celebration, something you're excited about, anything good. You could also share a hard thing. But yeah, I love that movement.
Yeah.
A writing.
Writing, yes. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple other questions I'd love to talk about, but this feels like a good place to maybe dig into your work a little bit more and just give you an opportunity to share what your work looks like if somebody was to work with you, and how people can find you. And links will be in the show notes for anybody, so you don't have to write this all down. But yeah, what is your work sort of look like now that you're in a 10-year recovery of engineering?
Thank you. Oh, engineering has its pros.
That's right.
It definitely does.
Yeah,
It definitely
I'm not shitting on it.
It has its pros and cons.
Yeah,
For sure.
I'm just kidding. So basically I'm a somatic practitioner, and I'm trained in the realm of Hakomi, for those that know the word or not. And it's kind of stands for like, how do we stand in the relationships of the many realms, or who are we? So I really help people find out who they are. But more practically, the people that I work with are people that tend to be really overwhelmed. And in our culture right now, with everything going on in the world, a lot of people are like anxious and overwhelmed. And, I say like people running around like with their chickens without a head, just like, sure, one thing, another. And so I help people like ground, and like that chicken without a head, connect, bring that body back, like let's reattach the head to the body. And so that's a lot of my work. And so it's in nervous system regulation and grounding and connecting to the earth and connecting to your body. And I do that through the work of somatic mindfulness. And so that could look like a lot of different things, but say someone's feeling really angry in their relationships, and I do work with people in this community. Someone's really angry because of something that happened. It's like we can talk about the thing for a bit, and I'll ask a lot of open-ended questions. I don't really tell people what to do. And then at some point, let's close our eyes if that feels comfortable, and let's see, where do you feel that anger in your body? I feel it in my heart. It's really hot. Hey, can we just take a few breaths there? Can we just be with that anger? And then, what is your heart needing? My heart's really needing to share with my partner about what happened. I really need to be honest. And it's like, okay, let's find out let's find the words that'll help satisfy your heart, and so let's change from a really body-based perspective, from the wisdom of the body. And then from there, can we find some more nervous system regulation? Can we find our breath? Can we find some ease? And then, people tend to feel more grounded and easeful, and just learn how to listen to the body and then live like that. And then it's just a resource you can use forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
Amazing. And links to your website and where people can find you will be in the show notes. So no need to write those down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is that I do a monthly free workshop on Zoom, and it goes over a different somatic tool each month. Like 1 month could be grounding, 1 month could be, dealing with a certain emotion, whatever. And people come and we practice live, and I do some live support, and it's a really nice community actually experience where people share. And so it's free. So that's how people can like get to know my work and have this nice experience. Some people come every month just to join and get, so.
Yeah.
And I would imagine if you come every month and you see somebody else there every month, what better way to start building community, making friends, from around the world.
Totally.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you get on my newsletter, you'll hear about those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I also want to shout out that I did a session with you a couple years ago and got so much out of that and really appreciated that experience. And so just encourage people to check out your work.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate you sharing about your work and excited to send people your way. And I'm also really curious, you had this change from the engineering world to the practitioner coaching, somatic coaching world. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you. Gosh. Yeah. So engineering, I always loved fixing things, and I loved physics actually. And so I thought this would be a good fit. The thing was that I found over years of doing it that sitting in front of a computer and just I was a design engineer, and I was designing telescopes and stuff at the University of Arizona. That's the last job I had, which is I found that job and I was like, okay, if this is one of the coolest engineering jobs you could have, I got to build everything myself and stuff. I was like, this is going to make me happy, this job. And after 4.5 years, I was like, this is making me miserable. But during that time there, I was myself kind of growing a lot spiritually, what I think is really important for anyone in the role of a space holder. Spiritually, I mean just learning about yourself internally and doing your own work. And so that was through a lot of men's work, through a lot of my own meditation retreats, a lot of somatic meditation practices and growth. I was changing a lot on the inside, and I felt like my work wasn't reflecting that, And so that was one piece. The other piece that I noticed that I think is helpful for people to hear and to reflect on is that when I was at work, I was working with these other humans that were loved being engineers. They would go home and they would research engineering, and they would go home and that's all they would do. That's what they loved. I went home and I researched meditation techniques, or I researched how to do men's work, or I researched somatic workshops I could attend and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing, spending my free time doing. Maybe that's what I need to transition. And so I don't know how many years ago it was now, maybe 5 years ago, I decided to start my own men's group, a private one in person in town that I facilitated. And that men's group is still going today, and it's just amazing and super deep. I love it so much. It's transformed me for sure. But I did that for a year, and I was like, if this feels good and if this works out, then that's going to be my sign to switch careers. And it did, and it felt so nourishing. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, holding space for people and dropping people into their bodies. And so, I think, that answers that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so that took you on that path. So it started with the men's group and then making that official transition.
Yeah. And then doing my own trainings, finding, somatic trainings, Hakomi and mindfulness coaching school, and a lot of other ones, and a lot of my own work. And so just learning and growing, and then finally feeling ready to offer that to other humans.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you go home, you study engineering, and the whole thing, it's all broken again.
Yeah, right.
I really relate to that. I think that was my experience, especially going through engineering school. So many of the people that I graduated with, it was all they could think about, all they could talk about, and good for them. And I just realized pretty early on that I'm not that way. I was decent at it. I could drop into it. I could do the work. I was a workhorse, but I wasn't passionate about it. And so I think there really is something to finding something that you are passionate about. And, it also, like you said earlier, like not all, it's not all bad, right? Like it was a vessel, it was a path to get to where we are. So sometimes you got to pay the bills. And that's just the reality
you
of
gotta
it.
pay the bills.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need health insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important
And,
things.
these are all like just what we said about how do we balance our priorities,
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. It's just like, what are we learning from each experience and how are we growing from it? And, what are we learning? What are we learning? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I had one maybe final-ish question for you, Johnny.
Yes.
And I don't mean to just tag it on here at the end because it feels very sort of foundational to your story, but you had mentioned that you're queer and that you came out to your family quite a while ago on that. But I'm curious where in your sort of personal journey that came up, and was that something you discovered as you started getting into the non-monogamy community, or did that come before that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. For me personally, it came way back when I was younger and kind of like, maybe middle school, high school age, like realizing like, oh, that, tall, dark, and handsome guy that just walked by me is one of my types is like really attractive. Whoa, I do a double take. And then, because of the conditioning and stuff, being like, oh, that's not allowed, like shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. And so in some ways I kind of forgot about it when in my like early 20s. In some ways, just because of the repression, like our minds are so good at that. And then actually it was interesting because the first day I met Natalie, we were in Vegas. We were in her hotel room watching like the World Cup was playing. And I grew up playing soccer like pretty seriously and competitively. And so I was like, can we put the World Cup on? And so we put it on. And then soccer players I find really attractive for sure. They're like exactly my type. And so I was just commenting on and be like, wow, isn't that guy so hot? And like Natalie, and I didn't really think about it. I kind of said it jokingly. And then I guess Natalie like tagged it and she's like, oh, I like this guy. It was like one of the things she really liked about me because she's also queer. And anyways, as we kind of like dated longer, she like brought it up a couple of times and been like, you remember that? Or like, what do you think? And I'll be like, yeah, I am. And so they kind of like started coming out of me, and then it meshed well with the non-monogamy poly community because of the openness and because there's lots of queer folks in this community too. I was like, wow, they can be queer. I can be queer too. And like, I can dress and, flamboyantly sometimes. And that's really fun for me because I saw other people do it too. And I would say it also works out well with this idea of an open relationship because like, there's a different kind of need met if I'm, engaging with someone that's a male versus a female. And so like, we can both get that in different ways and it really works out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you were able to start to embrace that part of yourself more in the container of the non-monogamy world too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All because of a Las Vegas pool party. Who would have thunk it?
Las Vegas pool party. Yeah, it's one of our running jokes.
Who'd have thunk it? I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Johnny, that you wanted to get out there today before we let you go?
I don't think I feel grateful for this call. Yeah, thank you both. This was really nice. No, I feel good. Yeah. Like one thing that feels like it could be said, I'll say maybe you could edit it out. One thing that feels like it could be said is like people in this community can really like feel overwhelmed. And like I've worked with some clients in this community. And so if I can like just support you in some way with just like easing your nervous system and like helping you connect to the earth and ground, like please like just reach out and we could just have a conversation. It'd be awesome. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Or join the free monthly call, learn some tools.
Yeah.
The tools are so valuable, right? And so I love it. I love it's practical.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you for offering that.
Yeah,
and thank you for the work you do.
Yeah,
and for everything you shared today.
Yeah. You keep stealing my thank you. Thank you from my side as well, Johnny, for all of it. And we're grateful we got to chat today and hope you have a lovely afternoon in Tucson in the desert. Enjoy the beauty of it all.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Johnny, for coming on the show, sharing your story, and for all of the work that you do. A quick reminder to anyone listening, go check out Johnny's work over on his website. Links are in the podcast show notes.
And a quick reminder that our next community workshop, we told you all about the community workshops in the intro. Our next community workshop is on June 25th, hosted by Orit Krug, and it is about releasing the fear of abandonment, a somatic approach. We'd love to have you come check it out. We'd love to have you come join the community. You can find out more information under the community tab of our website.
Next week, we have another interview for you. This one is with Kels. It's a great interview, so come back and listen in 1 week.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.